Welcome back, everyone, to the FTEN X Round Pegs Square Holes live interview. My name's Timothy Fair-Matthews, and I'm here today with Scott Mansell. So Scott is the founder of Driver 61. He's spent the last 25 years in motorsport, and he's driven everything from little small race cars right the way through to F1, which is pretty cool. Going to talk about that a little bit later. He's driven circuits all around the world, mainly in Europe, and he's had thousands of hours behind a race car. And now, obviously, because we're talking about the Inspiring to Pivot Online, we are going to be talking a bit about what he's done to pivot online, because I imagine the motorsport industry has been immensely affected. So first of all, welcome to the show, Scott. Really, really good to have you on board, mate. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much for having me today. Really appreciate being here with you.
No worries. Awesome. So tell us a bit about yourself. I mean, I obviously gave you a little quick intro there, but I mean, would love to know a bit about your history. I know there's a lot of information on the internet about you, but I'd really love to know what's been your highlights over your career so far.
Yeah, so I was in the fortunate position to start karting when I was 4 years old. My father bought me a little go-kart, and since then I've been in love with racing. Obviously, you give a little go-kart to a little boy, and he's going to fall in love. I've been racing professionally ever since, and have competed in single-seaters, sports cars, GT cars, whatever. And I've actually won a couple of European championships along the way. Since then, I've also moved into coaching. So for the last 15 years, I've been coaching. And over the last 3 years, I've developed a training program for amateur and professional racing drivers that's pretty unique in our industry. Alongside that, I started a website and Driver 61 3.5 years ago now. And since then, through our YouTube channel, we've had tens of millions of views over that time. We've got 160,000 subscribers, which is pretty good, I think, in my opinion, for such a niche,
pretty high.
such a niche market. So yeah, that's about where we are. In the last few months since the pandemic and the coronavirus, we've pivoted into sim racing. So we've taken what we understand from real world race coaching and how to develop drivers, and we're developing and have developed numerous courses for sim races, which is we're not targeting drivers or sim users that have the pads. They've got a good setup, a good proper steering wheel and pedals like that, but a lot of the skills are transferable across, and so we've pivoted into that area.
Amazing. Wow. That's I don't know where to begin. I mean, that's quite a background. I mean, first of all, one of the things I want to first of all, it's for my own curiosity, because I'm a big petrol head. I love my cars. I really want to know what an F1 car is like to drive. What's that like?
Well, they vary so much over the years. I've driven from 1982 is the earliest car that I've driven, all the way up to 2013. So across those decades and the different eras and regulations they change, they actually do get a little bit less raw as you get to the more modern cars. So for me, the early to mid 90s cars are the most raw, the kind of most difficult to drive and the quickest.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Those cars were super fast, but very, very difficult to drive. So kind of that Senna era was where the magic is.
They don't really make them like they used to, do they?
No, I mean, the current generation are pretty fast, but they're just not, they don't look as on edge as those old cars. So when you do watch the older footage, you really think, wow, those guys were something special to be able to keep those things on the track. And it's the same thing when you're driving them, I drove a 1992 Schumacher car, the Camel one, the yellow Camel one.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's H pattern, so you've got to change gear, like old style. 700 brake horsepower, really difficult, challenging car to drive. And
probably no power steering as well either, right?
Zero power steering, no. And you just have to be in awe of how those drivers drove those cars. And it's when you're driving them, it's coming at you thick and fast. You feel everything. The adrenaline's incredible. So I'm in a privileged position to have driven all of those cars.
I know it's I think a lot of people who are petrol head fans watching this, it's going to be one of those things very few people get to experience. So yes, no, it's good that you appreciate it, because I mean, I'd be terrified, to be honest. I mean, I've done a bit of race driving, a bit of track day stuff, not a lot, obviously, but it is amazing when you're on the track how different and how aware of everything you are, and just it must be absolutely crazy in something like that. Amazing machine.
Yeah, it's crazy. I actually do some work with the Renault F1 team, and they run a program with some of their sponsors and for some prize winners where they'll put a normal person in a Formula One car for a few laps in the circuit in Paul Ricard in France. And I brief them and coach them, get them prepared. But when they jump in the car and the mechanics start the engine, it's an old V8 engine, wow, super loud, and you just see their eyes go like this, and everything that you've told them pretty much falls away because there's so much going on. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good thing to kind of fall into next. I mean, driving is not as, depending on if there's many people here that are not really into cars or race car driving. I mean, one of the things that is incredibly complex is how much goes into putting down a fast lap time, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the things that you've obviously developed over the years, thousands of hours behind the wheel of a race car. What made you get into coaching? Like, why did you feel that this is something you wanted to focus into first of all? And tell us a bit about how complex this can be, because I mean, I know firsthand working on a race circuit how complex it is, but just give the audience a little background on that as well.
Well, I think I first understood that being coached works when I was a kid. My dad owns a race team, so I was lucky from that perspective. He's a race engineer, and so he would coach me as a kid. And so I very early on I made that connection that if you've got a good person there telling you what to do and you do it, then it makes you better. So I've always had that in me. I mean, and from there, I just love coaching. That moment that I have when myself or one of my coaches is sat next to a driver and we get some feedback from them, and the thing just clicks. And racing a car is a complex thing. There's so many things going on, and to be fast, which I think a lot of people might not realize, even if they've got a Porsche or Ferrari on the road, they may not realize that the level that you have to be at to be quick. You've got to be driving the car on the limit of grip all the time, and if you leave an ounce of grip on the table, then you're not going to be fast. So actually, in our communication from the beginning, the typical journey for an amateur driver, a gentleman driver as we call them, is that they'll have a Porsche or a performance car on the road, and they'll think, well, I can drive this pretty well on the road. And then they go and do a track day or even a test day in a race car, and they then understand how challenging it is. And so once they understand that they do need a bit of coaching, the joy then comes from them having the car on the limit, sliding around, balanced, and feeling in control of it. Our biggest problem with our clients is that they can get the car somewhere close to this limit and have it, moving around, sliding across the tarmac, but it's happening to them rather than them being in control of it. And that's where we spend most of our training time.
Of course, no. So, I mean, I think one of the things I've noticed, certainly about the motorsport industry, and I guess this can be translated to any industry, is that in this particular one, there's not many people doing the coaching to the level that you're probably doing it, especially now that you've moved into the sim racing. But before, let's talk before coronavirus first. I mean, how much competition do you actually have with regards to this?
Well, there are thousands of coaches around the world, but they're all pretty much doing the same thing, to be honest with you. They'll typically have a stable of 5 or 6 drivers that they look after each year, and they'll follow them around the world, going to testing, practice, or race weekends. And the problem is there's limited time on the track because it's so expensive to run your Ferrari GT3 car, and you've got to share the circuit with other people. You don't get that much track time, and when you do, there's many other distractions on the circuit. You'll be sharing the circuit with 30 or 40 other cars, and so as soon as you're distracted, you're not learning as quickly as you could. So 3 years ago, I took a step back and thought, is there a better way that we can do this, a better way that we can train racing drivers? So our concept is to open up as much mental bandwidth as we can for the driver. So that means we actually put them in quite a slow car, so that they're not just so the corners aren't just coming at them faster and faster. So they've got time to think about the car while it's sliding on the limit. We hire a circuit exclusively, so there's no other distractions on the track, and it's quite a short track, so they get massive repetition. And beyond that, we then break down our techniques into very small bite-sized pieces, like you might do if you were learning karate. You know, you just start with one punch and repeat it and repeat it. If you compare that to normal coaching, the drivers will go out with another 30 cars on the circuit and they'll try to think about all their different techniques all at once, and none of it really sticks. And so we break it down, build it up in layers, make sure we get the first bit, the fundamentals checked off, perfected in isolation, and then we move up to the next section and we layer up the skills. Brilliant.
I mean, I've got a business coach here in Dubai, and he says something that's his name's Phil Bedford. He links about, if you throw a load of balls at people, they usually drop every single ball, but if you give them one or two balls, they can catch it. And I guess it's the same sort of thing you're doing with this. You're breaking it down and systemizing it in a way where people can digest it. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems I think any form of education comes from, whether it be motorsport or any industry. It's just trying to retain all what you're being told, especially. So, I mean, that's awesome. So that must have really helped then with you guys when you pivoted online, because you have such a structured system anyway. How have you managed to do that with now this sim racing platform you've now developed, which I'm assuming is through Driver 61? Is that right? It's all on the website, is it?
That's correct. Yeah.
So how have you managed to pivot yourself with regards to going from an actual physical venue to then online?
Yeah, so all the circuits got closed in March, and so racing stopped. We didn't have anywhere to train, and so we had to pivot. I'd already done some research into the sim world, but if you think about sim racing compared to other computer games, if you go for kind of a mid to high level sim racer, the equipment that they have, the quality of the equipment that I have, and you can't quite see it here. I've got it's just behind me, so you can't see it, but I've got a good quality simulator here. Yeah. It's actually very similar in terms of the hardware, the steering wheel, the pedals, and so on. Very similar to what we have in the real world compared to other esports. And so I think, sim racing and real world racing, the blend across the two is going to be a lot earlier than you would have in other esports. If you sit in the simulator and you wear your VR headset and you've got a really high quality steering wheel, it's 90% of the way there. Obviously, you're not feeling the G-force in the car.
Feedback. Yeah, you're not getting the feedback.
But you begin to use different senses. So you use your hearing a lot more. You use the feel. The steering wheel feels exactly the same, like the quality of the wheels. When you turn it into the corner, the feedback that it gives you there is exactly
really? It gives you feedback. That's cool. Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. So this blend across the two is pretty close. And I have clients of mine who are using simulators to train for the real world. So actually, the fundamental technique through real world racing to sim racing is very similar, and so the transition across in the content only needed a little bit of tweaking.
Do you know what's jumped out at me is, forget the coronavirus for the minute and the pandemic and the crisis and the fact you had to pivot, is now you've actually got a business which is more efficient. It can help more people, and ironically might make them better drivers doing their coaching with you through this. I mean, obviously still doing the actual racing as well, but I'm assuming you can do this instead of one-to-one, you could do one-to-many, I'm assuming.
Yeah, to a
and
point.
You can, yeah. So, and obviously people then don't need to worry about traveling and lots of other stuff. So you've saved circuit hire. I mean, I imagine there's a load of software development and behind the door, like, lots of costs behind closed doors. But I mean, in a way, this has almost, evolved your business, and it's not like it's had to change. If anything, it's just added like a whole new ecosystem, hasn't it, of assets?
That's exactly right. It's actually opened us up to our customer base on the sim side. Is on one side we've got the real world racers who want to use the simulator to improve their real world racing, and then on the other side of things we've got pure sim racers who aren't actually particularly interested in real world racing and they just want to get better on the sim. The beauty is that the techniques that you need to have is pretty much the same across both of these customer bases.
That's amazing. It's really, really cool. So I mean, we've established then obviously the seat time is a big problem, and I think that's the majority that most drivers I think have as an issue. I mean, how do you see this obviously sticking around, regardless of whether the virus comes and goes? I mean, do you see many other coaches doing this? Do you think this is a new era, so to speak, in terms of motorsport coaching?
Yeah, I mean, sim racing's seen a lot of real world attention from real world drivers, because a lot of the Formula One are doing a championship, IndyCar are doing a championship. Because they scrambled to get some E series together, but it was already a massive thing. It was just with what the pandemic's allowed us to do is to have a little bit of space and to look at where we can develop the business in a different area, as I suppose it has with many people. So I mean it's been really interesting from that perspective.
How's it been? How's it been received? I mean, has it been quite popular? I mean, you've been live with this a month now, is that right?
Yeah, just about a month at the moment. Yeah, I mean, we did a test product. We did lots of surveying, got lots of research to see what the customers actually wanted. Then we had an early access group, but beyond that, the first time that we sold, a product, as it were, we sold out within 24 hours, 50 places, which was just incredible.
Wow. You mentioned there you surveyed. I mean, what I would like to do is I'd like to touch a little bit about and go a bit micro here on what you did, because I think a lot of people, probably not in motorsport, but are in industries that are probably very affected right now with regards to what's going on. And obviously, because this is about pivoting online, I'd love to know and go a little bit more detail about what you did in terms of your steps. Now, the first thing you mentioned, you did surveys, which, we're big fans of. I mean, data is key. But tell us a bit about your process and why you did that. That would be really helpful for us just to understand. So did you start off with that? Was that the first process for you, or did you?
Yeah,
was there
that was the first process. I mean, we're in the fortunate position that we've got a big email list, which has grown over the last 3 years from YouTube and from the website. We've collected all of people's information. But from there, we put together actually quite a big survey. And to be honest with you, I didn't think that many people were going to make their way through, because it was a bit detailed, like it was 15-20 minutes of time. But we had 300 responses. Wow. And from that, we then gathered so much information about what platform that we're using, how much money they were willing to spend, what equipment they had, which cars they particularly wanted courses on. We've got a Bible now of information.
So it was almost, you didn't even need to come up with the idea. You were pretty much told by a load of people wanting to spend money, make me this. And that's what pretty much happened. Wow.
That was the first step, yeah.
A lot of people miss that step, though. I mean, I think a lot of people forget the power of just picking up the phone and speaking to their current audience, especially in this time. So, I mean, one of the biggest, takeaways I think people can get from this call straight away is to just pick up the phone, speak to your audience. Exactly. You'd be amazed how you can find.
Sorry to cut in. That was our second step. So my partner on this, in Canada, once we did the surveys, we asked them if they'd be interested in doing some interviews, and he did 30 interviews, 30-minute interviews every day. Just sat there and got the information from our target audience, and all that information means that then when we did try and sell something, that's why we sold it.
Amazing. So you've partnered with someone in Canada. That's cool. So again, just go to show the use of remote working. What's the chap in Canada doing? Is he developing the platform, or what's he doing there? Yeah,
he's been involved in a few startups before. So he's really working behind the scenes. I'm creating content, building the audience, and things like that, which I've been doing for years anyway. And he's organizing and developing some of the products as well. He's also putting together, we've got 5 coaches who are fully trained now to work with us, and we've got another 5 in the pipeline. So he's building the staffing there.
Wow. And are these coaches the same coaches you had when you were doing the physical, actual one-to-one, or are these different?
No, we've gone a bit more bespoke, I suppose. We've selected experts in different platforms, different software, and so we're working with them, and the ultimate goal is so that they can then develop their own courses that are specific to a racing game.
Awesome. Okay. So after the third, so what was the third step then? You managed to oversubscribe this. That's pretty amazing. So I mean, obviously you're obviously quite savvy with how business works, but is this something that you think's really accelerated your learning over the last couple of months, or were you quite comfortable at marketing this idea and getting that out? I'm sure your audience was integral here, but it'd be nice to know what the next step was for that.
Yeah, the audience was there. That was a bit made things a lot easier, right? Because for us to just get 300 surveys back was great, and it really helped things. But I suppose you could advertise that, or I don't know, you could get that to work some other way. So then we interviewed all of the potential customers. We designed a program, and rather than just go directly online in terms of creating videos and so on, we actually tested the market with a 4-hour workshop with me live. And to be honest with you, it didn't require much work because it was within the framework that I'd already developed in the real world. And so we just did the minimum product that we could to make sure that it would sell. So I guess the third step is to make sure that you can sell what you think you can sell at the price that you think you can sell it at. We did. And we actually probably priced it a little bit too low. And we sold out those 50 spaces within 24 hours.
Wow. I mean, Sebastian, my fellow co-host and co-founder of FTEN X Academy, talks a lot about how if you can get what your initial plan was, your mission, and get the goal, you actually find that a lot of people can pivot if they just change the delivery and how they do that. So really what you're doing is you're not effectively changing your business at all. It's just your method on how, of course, you get across that knowledge to people. Obviously with the confines of not being able to go on a track, but that's amazing. Awesome. So, I mean, in terms of your own support, I'd love to know kind of like what people have been quite influential for your success, do you think, and helping you in this situation. Have you got any particular mentors yourself? Do you recommend it? What do you think there?
So when I first started Driver 61, my sole goal was I'd been reading books about giving away as much content as you could and giving away as much value as you could. I listened to Pat Flynn quite a lot right at the beginning. Read the 4-Hour Work Week and those types of books.
Timothy Ferris is a good one.
Pretty common stuff. Yeah. And I just put out a load of content, and my idea wasn't exactly a plan, but I was trying to build an audience, and then at some point I'd be able to monetize that audience. And that, I mean, it's been so powerful. Understanding that we have kind of top of funnel content on YouTube, and then coming down to being familiar and building authority with them with my more technical videos. I explain the details of racing. It means that in the real world, we then were able to sell a £2,000 product, which is a day course with us, without really getting them on the phone. Like we do speak to the customers beforehand now because we've improved the sales process, but it just amazed me by how trustworthy how much trust those videos would build, because we survey the people now when they do our scorecard, but they've watched almost 10 to 15 hours of our content, and that really helped things. But then going back to your original question, I did the Key Person of Influence program with Dan Priestley, which really helped me to organize my ideas and get things, have a bit more strategy involved. I was just kind of throwing things at the wall before and seeing, what was happening, and didn't take that step back to see how organized things should be and what the processes look like. I've been a self-employed coach all my life, run my own thing. I've never been inside what we would call a proper business. So the processes and how basically a proper business runs, I'd not seen before. And so the KPI course really helped me to understand that.
How long ago did you do the KPI course?
This time last year.
Wow, in 1 year. It's ironic, isn't it? And it's not a dig, mate. I know a lot of people that are in this similar situation, but coaches do need coaching, don't they? Even if it's not about the same thing. So. Oh
no. I mean, I don't feel ashamed or embarrassed about talking about that, because how am I supposed to know? I've never been in a dynamic startup that might have these systems, or an established business that has these set processes. I've just been at racetracks all my life, so and to be honest with you, I wasn't far off. I got most of the stuff in place, but a few little tweaks here and there, and it just opened everything up.
That's amazing. I think that's really powerful, guys. So I think like Daniel Priestley, by the way, is going to be coming on the group in a few days anyway. He's going to be sharing all his insights. So it's nice to know you've been mentored by him. I know Seb has as well, and he's provided a lot of value to him over the years. And it just shows. I mean, it's credit to you for doing nearly all of it, almost there. But it's amazing how that little bit more, like you said, just with racing, that little bit extra, using a little bit more grip, makes you, from 1 second to 2 seconds faster on a lap or so, isn't it?
Exactly. It is exactly the same on track as well. You just tweak a few fundamental things and then it flows. You have fluidity with the car. And it's the same with the business. I tried a few things. We actually had an online store before, again, trying to monetize the audience. And that required so much brute force to keep it working, so much effort to make it happen. That in the end it only lasted 18 months because it wasn't working well. And since we just changed our product into the training, it's pulled itself along. So now I feel like I know the difference when you've got a business that isn't working against one that is working, because always in the back of your mind, if it isn't quite working, it's like, do I just need to go a little bit further? Do I need to just crack on? It's a very difficult decision to make to stop something. And with that online store, it just felt like it had a lot of friction. It was difficult to maintain the momentum. Whereas now we're being pulled along, which is interesting.
Well, the market doesn't lie. You sometimes just have to go with it, and that's why the survey process is incredibly important. So, I mean, well done. One thing that I really would like to just kind of go back to is you mentioned that you're a big fan of YouTube and you're putting out a lot of content on there. So just to clarify, that content you were putting online wasn't like a paid thing that people had to get to, or it was hidden for certain people. It was completely free and open to the public. Is that right?
Yes. And actually at the beginning, I tried to control it too much. I produced a 25-part series breaking down all different techniques of driving, like whiteboard tutorials. Really detailed, very, very niche. But I mean, I think they've had 1.2, 1.3 million views now, which is for such a niche subject is quite good. And actually at the beginning, I hosted them only on my website. So I used a software called Wistia, which is like YouTube, but you can protect it and just keep it on your website, because I was of the opinion, well, and this was 4 years ago, if I put it on YouTube, then people can just stay on YouTube and I won't get the traffic to my website and I'll lose control of it. I did that for 6 months and it was going pretty well. And then someone said to me, come on, Scott, just put it on YouTube, just try it on YouTube. And again, we opened it up, gave it away for free. It was already free on the website before, but put it on YouTube as a platform, and it just generates its own traffic, which is just incredible.
Why would you say doing that is important? Like, why would you, like, if you had to if you were speaking to any business owner and they're not currently doing online content, but you feel they could add a lot of value to online, why would you say that's so important?
Well, first of all, you build yourself as an authority. Now, when I go to the racetracks, I'll have 5 to 10 people come up to me and shake my hand and thank me for the content. We get emails every single day. It's nice from that side, right? But I stand out. There aren't any other coaches that have taken the time to put that effort in, and so automatically I've gone from being on a kind of level playing field with them to being, the coach that people come and say hello to, which is fantastic. So, as I mentioned before, then that transition from actually online scalable content to them coming and spending some money with us is a much smoother and easier transition. Yeah,
of course. Well, it's all about rapport, isn't it? I mean, it's like going into a shop, and if someone's very much there trying to sell you something, you're a bit put off. But if people take the step back approach and let them come to you, you actually find that sales are a much easier process. Like you said, trying to not even having to speak to someone on the phone, and yet they would spend a £2,000 product with you. That's amazing.
Exactly. Wow. At the beginning, I was a little bit worried about giving all of this information. I was worried about giving it away and, you know, kind of not having people then come to me because they've got the information. I was worried about what my peers would say because I was giving away lots of information. I got over the second one.
Effectively disrupting, aren't you? Almost.
Yeah.
In a way.
I got over the second one very quickly. And I mean, it's had a massive effect on the business. Giving away the information, they still need to come to you to kind of put it in order and create a strategy specific for them. We actually have drivers that come, you know, they watch all of my tutorials on whiteboard, they know it, all the theory, but then they come and do the actual practical stuff. We embed the information into their, you know, into them so they know it off by heart, and then they go back and watch the tutorials again and say, now I really know how that feels. And so they've got all of this information out there. I suppose it is reasonably noisy. And then they come and do the training with us and they understand what the kind of step-by-step process should be.
It's in a way, it's kind of a no-brainer why anyone would be doing this, because you almost qualify. The audience is self-qualifying, because by the time they get to you, they know you don't need to build the rapport so much because they already know it, feel like they've known you for years. It's
yeah. I've had I've had 50-year-old men tell me that I send them to sleep each night because we make some track guides. So we basically taught them around the circuit, and so actually some of their wives have come up to me and said, "I know your voice."
Oh God,
my husband, I know. Yeah.
The wives must hate you.
A Brummie accent as well.
Yeah, no. Well, that's awesome. I mean, it just goes to show that. I mean, you've got quite a niche target market. I mean, explain your target market actually. So the people that you normally tutor, are they quite young? Are they old? Like, who is the persona of the person that you normally sell to?
20% of our customers are young racers who are aiming to become professional or are professional. But the chunk of it are what we call gentleman drivers. So CEOs, business owners, they've been working away, they've made their money, and then they decide they want to go and race a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever it may be. They'll typically be between 40 and 55 years old, and they want to learn as efficiently as they can, and that's why they come to us.
Amazing. Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it? If you know your target market, it doesn't matter how niche you are, because there's always enough people out on the planet, you know, that want your services. Yeah. We've got a really interesting question here that Jamie Baker has asked. Are many other automotive companies as successful as you are in moving online? So is there anyone else that you know that's pivoting quite interestingly in your industry? Or would you say you guys are slightly ahead of the curve in this respect?
Specifically into the sim racing side of things, there's been a couple of coaches I know move into online coaching, but they're just basically taking what they've done in the real world and doing that, well, as I have, but they're just doing like one-to-one coaching, which doesn't have any structure, which doesn't have the methodology there, excuse me. And so that's actually quite a difficult thing to scale because it's just one-to-one. And they're kind of missing the opportunity that the sim racing, the online thing gives to you, because we can scale. So going back to the stages that we spoke about before, we sold this first product where it was 4 hours of me working with 15 to 20 drivers. So we did that for 3 weeks. Once we understood that firstly worked and we got some feedback on how we could improve, we've now started to develop that same course, but over 4 or 5 weeks, with 80% of it being online, because I was doing it live and I was doing the briefings, the demonstrations and stuff that we could easily just record and put online. And then at the end, we were just doing one-to-one coaching with a number of coaches. So what we've done now is we've moved the stuff that can go online, the briefing and the demonstrations. They then get that at the beginning of the week. They do the driving, they do the exercises, and then at the end of the week, we have a Q&A session with everybody on, and then at the end of the week, they have one-to-one coaching as well with one of our coaches to see if they have any blockages or just to make sure they're on the right track.
No, it's good. I mean, again, that's a very valuable bit of information that I think most people watching is to develop your digital assets. You know, try and find a way to, in this time, if you feel you can't pivot online, find ways you can at least streamline what you're doing. I mean, how much more efficient would you say you guys actively are now that you're 1 month in or 2 months into this this pandemic?
It means that we can scale. It means that rather than all the cost is in the coaches. If we can put most of it online, we can scale a lot more. And so in terms of efficiency, it's a massive increase, 4 or 5 times, because all of the briefings and so on are just online. But having said that, we did the work beforehand to make sure that when I do spend 10 or 20 hours creating the online content, it's the right stuff.
No, absolutely. I mean, it certainly does need to apply to a current process, well, obviously, yeah, of course. Now, we've got another comment here from Sabrina Sakely. She talks about, well, we mentioned oversubscribing earlier on in the conversation. So what is oversubscribing, just for the audience, and why is that so important? I think that obviously ties into the fact that when you sold out your first, you sold out the 4-hour workshop, didn't you? Was that the one that you sold out?
Well, we've sold out all of them, yeah.
Oh, great. So, yeah. Well, there we go. So tell us a bit about that. You're obviously doing something right.
So that first one was, we set a target of 50 people that we wanted to get to purchase. I think it was 300 or 350. It was over 300 people registered and wanted to sign up. So that's what being oversubscribed is, and it's one of Dan Priestley's concepts that I learned from him. And basically, he says that if you can increase the demand, then it sets the price. You can set the price higher because you've got people waiting and queued up. So we run them through. We set up a landing page for the course or the program, and we set a limit to the capacity, which is important. We set a time limit for registration, but we don't sell it straight away. We put people onto a waiting list. This is something that Dan explained, and companies like Monzo do it. They set up a waiting list, get a bit of buzz behind everything, get people interested and exciting, and then once they're on a registers list, we go back to them and say, look, we've had 330 people interested in this course. As you know, we've only got 50 spaces. Here's the link to purchase the course if you want to join us. And then that's why we can sell out in a day.
And obviously, again, it helps with the fact that the guys already know, like, and trust you. The audience is there; they're qualified. They've been watching your content for years. I mean, yeah, it's all plays a huge part to it, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've got another comment here from Sebastian. Glad you're watching, Seb. So Seb says, when the lockdown restrictions loosen up and you're able to coach on the track again, how much of your time will you allocate to the track, or will you remain online? Well, remain online is your focus. What would you do there? How are you imagining? Let's just fast forward to 6 months from now. What's the plan? How does the model work?
So actually, I'd set all of 2019. I did the on-track coaching myself. I worked with 120 different drivers. We did 120 days on the track, and it was pretty intense.
Wow.
We were again oversubscribed. We would release dates every month, 10 dates every month, and again within a day or two, we'd sold them all. So that was great because that's a big £2,000 product. So then I wanted to increase our capacity. So at the end of last year, I trained some other coaches, some coaches that I've been working with for over a decade now in my methodology and everything. And we've transitioned to using those guys. So we've just had a baby a week ago.
Congratulations.
And so thank you. And so I'd already set things up so that I was going to have this period more open and free for me, so I didn't have to be outside the house too much anyway. So it just happens that what's happened here with coronavirus has happened, but I'd set things up so the middle part of this year I didn't need to be moving around too much. I'd also changed how I sold my coaching last year, because I only wanted to do last year the coaching at one track in the same car and just have the only other variable being the driver. It meant that I learned so much because I wasn't changing car, I wasn't changing track, I wasn't changing I was only changing the driver. And so the patterns that you see across all these drivers was much clearer because I could, the circuit and the car wasn't changing. But I had drivers asking me to mentor them on the weekends, at the race weekends. And I said no for 6 months or so. And then I spoke with Dan. Actually, I did one of their blockbusters, and they say if you can give the bread and butter stuff to another coach or another couple of coaches, then and you have customers who want to spend a bit more money with you with more kind of bespoke coaching or mentoring, then do that. So I put together a couple of packages where I limited the number of drivers that I would work with in massive detail all year. This is like 30 days per driver. Limited it to a capacity of 2, and then I sold those at an exclusive premium rate. And so that means, going back to Seb's question, was that I just then went from working 120 days at the track down to 60 days.
That's crazy.
And so I'd freed things up anyway. And so it just so happened that because we've been stuck at home more, the sim stuff got accelerated.
What other aspects do you think are here to stay? Not even linked to your industry. What do you think we're going to start noticing just with businesses generally and how we operate over the next, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years and above?
Well, that's a big question. I've had my blinkers on, to be honest with you, with my head down, working on my own business. I haven't had time to come up and breathe. I mean, from our side, with the high-end simulators, like we've got racing drivers that will spend £10,000 on one of these sims. They've bought them, where they may not have had them before. They've bought them. So I partner with a company who supply these simulators, these high-end simulators. And I spoke to them at the end of March. And in the last week of March, they turned over more money than they did in the previous quarter of 2019. Wow. So from my side, in terms of the kind of racing drivers, they've bought the equipment. Right, so they're going to want to use them. They're going to be using them a lot more. So this has happened all over the world. It's very difficult at the moment to get any sim hardware because they're all sold out. They can't supply it quickly enough. So I think the sim training and supplementing real world racing has taken a big step forward. Also, the real world championships, Formula One, IndyCar, loads of them have put together online series. So it could be something that we see during the off season where they have these races going on, because the viewing figures are actually very good.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's like in the last 5 years, I swear it's probably been a bit longer, but I mean, I've only just cottoned onto it. But I mean, people like professional gamers are now coming up. There's so much online sim related, games that are now, well, not even games like sports, I guess is the correct word for it. That's just popped up, and the viewing figures are insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. Wow. I mean, I think it's been a really insightful conversation with you, Scott. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge. Hopefully, we get to finally meet face to face one day soon. But I mean, best of luck. Otherwise, you've been out to Dubai before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been to the Autodrome 5 or 6 times, and to Abu Dhabi about the same as well.
Nice. What's your favorite track out here?
Dubai Autodrome's the best. It's a nice flowing circuit, good fun.
Fantastic, awesome. Well, thank you so much, mate. How can people get in contact with you? Just should they have any other further questions, or how do they keep active and follow what you're doing? What's the best way?
We've got a Facebook page, official Driver 61, and we've got the YouTube channel at Driver 61.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, mate.
Cheers. No, pleasure to speak with you. Have a good day.
Take care, everyone.